Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be opening another box today. The reason I'm excited about this is because it kind of represents kind of the start of a journey for Dell that led me to buy the Dell XPS M1530 that you saw on the video a few months ago. You'll see when I get it out anyway, but I'm very excited to have a little look at what's in here. Fairly well packaged. In fact, that's not the original packaging, is it? No, can't be. Nicely packaged, thank you, seller. I do appreciate a well packaged item. So like everything else I buy, mostly it's come from eBay. And let's just take some stuff out. So basically, you can tell from the era straight away that it's a Windows XP based machine. This is the OEM version, it's a bit faded. But this tells you all about Windows XP in case you're not familiar with it. Very nice. One of the reasons I got particularly excited about this purchase was because it did come with all its original accessories, or most of them. So here we have the first clue. We have the Dell XPS M170, so M170, M170. I don't know how you'd best pronounce that. The M1530 is easy to pronounce because it's got 4 digits, but M170, I presume. But anyway, owner's manual. These get lost over time, so it's really nice to have this. Very, very good. So yeah, so in here is a Dell XPS M170. We also have the original install discs, which is extremely welcome. So we've got Windows XP Professional, actually, which I don't think is what's installed on this system. But we do have these 2 original discs. So that's actually just the drivers and utilities. So maybe it is a Windows XP based machine. Windows Professional based machine, I should say. Interesting, but it's nice to have the original discs. What's also nice to have is the original power supply, because these are monstrous. So these are 130 watt power supplies, and if you don't have one of these, it's very hard to run this size of laptop from a 90 or a 65 watt. I don't know if they complain about it, but basically you can't run them and charge a battery at the same time. So it's nice to have the original full power supply. This last had a date check on it of 2009, which might give you a clue as to when it was last used. And then here we have the laptop itself, wrapped in bubble wrap and surrounded by polystyrene, so thank you very much. It's big and it's heavy. The 17 in the M170 is the size of the screen. So this is a 17-inch gaming laptop. And there we have it in all its 17-inch laptop glory. It's really heavy. I think it's about 4 and a bit kilos, 5 kilos, something like that. This came out in 2005, so it's now 19 years old. So it has got a few scratches and scrapes on the front. On this, I'm guessing it's aluminium, polished aluminium, but it's not too bad. The buttons are a little bit worn on the front, but overall, looking from this side, it looks pretty good. Should we open it up? It's so big and black. It's so big and black, it's making the camera seem a little bit overexposed. That is a lot of screen. That is a lot of laptop. So, it's got a battery in. Should we turn it on, see if it works? No. There's a dodo. That's totally fine. The eBay listing photos did show it running. It is sold as spares though, in the sense that there's no hard drive in here. So you can't boot an operating system off it. Let's have a look at the design. It's a very similar keyboard layout to the 1530. It's just got so much more space around it. Media buttons on the front, a bit like the M1210. Not so much like the 1530, which is much more discreet across the front. Trackpad, loads and loads of space. Tiny little speaker grills. And then an absolutely ginormous screen. So let's just have a look at the top. So it's got this kind of aluminium effect, sort of 3D surface. Black everywhere else. Hinges seem pretty sturdy. On this side we have a PC card slot by the looks of it. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's PC card, it's not express card. It's nice to have the original Dell Blanca in there. Underneath that is, I presume, what is the caddy for hard drive, but we haven't investigated that yet. SD card reader, small firewire, audio in and out, a fan, grill. Around the back there are a lot of ports. Big fan grill. Got TV out, Ethernet, modem, 4 USBs. I think that's USB 2s. It's got a DVI and a VGA, and then power in, and another exhaust fan here for the cooling. Inlet for the cooling, 2 more USBs, so that's 6 in total, and then a DVD read writer. But around the front here, you've got the media keys. You've got volume, play, stop, forward, backwards, forwards, and stop. Set pause and stop, I should say. And then a fairly chunky catch. There's more speaker grill across the front. So what about the bottom? We've got the front of what I said looks like the hard drive caddy, which it is. Hopefully that doesn't need an interposer, but we'll find out shortly. I presume this is the battery. It's got a battery indicator on it, but it's obviously flat. Battery release catch, I'm guessing. Yep. So the battery isn't huge in terms of size. It's 7200 milliamp hours, 80 watt hours. That's pretty decent. For a 17-inch laptop with a full NVIDIA GTX card, I don't think we're going to be getting long life out of that, even when it was new. We've got a grill here for what is called the subwoofer. Another air inlet here, 2 in fact. And then we've got 2 access hatches. One's going to be for RAM and one's going to be for connectivity, for example, the wireless. Let's open up these hatches and see what's inside. The bottom's not very scratched, is it actually, looking at it? So that's nice. Mind you, I'm not surprised. 17-inch laptops aren't often very mobile. They tend to sit in one place. So yes, we have 2 RAM slots. It's got what looks like a match pair, probably a factory 1 gig PC2 4200 DIMMs in there. So 2 gigs of RAM. When it came out, this came with 1 gig as standard. So 2 gigs was an upgrade. Let's have a look. See if they've upgraded any of the connectivity. We've got a Dell XP Professional sticker on the bottom. So the reason I was surprised it was an XP Professional disc was because I thought this standard came with Windows XP Home Media Center Edition. But that's got an XP Professional sticker on it. Screws are captive, that's nice. And then yeah, so in here we've got the modem daughter board and the wireless, which is an Intel wireless one. It's a Dell part number 0W9764, but I can't see any Intel clues as to what it is. But at the time this came out, 8011G was the prevailing standard. Just looking at the stickers, so this has got Bluetooth as well. Yes, so this has got G wireless. So yeah, so it draws 19.5 volts, which is standard voltage for Dell, but 6.7 amps. That is a lot of current, and that's why we need that chunky power supply. Okay, I think we should plug this in and turn it on and see what happens when we get into the BIOS. There's a locking nut here, which presumably is for the optical drive. Yeah, looks like it. So the fact that the power supply has got cable ties on both this side and the other side makes me think this was pretty static, didn't move around much, was just on somebody's desk. Okay, I plugged it in. You probably can't see from there, but there is a battery charging icon that's come on the back right. So you can see the LEDs both with the lid open and lid closed, which is a nice feature. Let's turn it on, see what happens. Power light, Bluetooth light, Dell logo. Screen's pretty bright actually, not too bad considering it's nearly 20 years old. Version A05 of the BIOS, we haven't checked if that's the most up to date. And it's going to presumably complain that there's no hard drive in here. One thing that's missing is the webcam, so the next generations started having webcams I think, from memory. Certainly the 1530 has. So after this was the 1710, and then after that was the 1730. All very, very similar in terms of kind of size and build and competency, but it was a reflection of the new processor generations that were coming out at the time. As you can see, this is an Intel Mobile Centrino, so this has a Pentium M processor. Internal hard disk hard drive error. Strike F1 key to continue or F2 to run the setup. So we're in the setup. System info doesn't really tell us anything we didn't know already. Processor, so Pentium M, it's at 2.26 gigahertz, so that was the fastest the Pentium M ever went. And that's pretty fast actually. Most Pentium M's were in the range of 1.4 to 1.7, maybe 1.8. They then bumped the speed up to 2 gigs, but 2.26 is the fastest I've ever seen, and it's the fastest they ever made. So that's pretty impressive. To give you some context, a 2.26 gigahertz Pentium M is probably about the same as a 3.2 gigahertz Pentium 4. Obviously this doesn't have hyperthreading, it isn't dual core, it's single core. Memory, yep, 2 gigs of 533 megahertz. Because we've got 2 modules in, we've got dual memory architecture, so that's nice. And this is the crowning glory of this particular machine. It comes with the GeForce Go 7800 GTX. That was pretty impressive. It was the top end mobile graphics card at the time, and it was about 40% faster than the previous generation. So we've got DVD read-write. It's got 256 megs of dedicated RAM for the graphics card, and we've got the 1920 by 1200 screen. And it does look pretty good, even from this angle that I'm looking at. It looks pretty decent. Standard audio modem, mini wireless, and Bluetooth is installed on this module, on this unit. So this is kind of the top end. So it's got the fastest processor, it's got Bluetooth, which was optional, and it comes with Windows XP Professional, which is the upgrade. So the battery's charging, 3% charge. I doubt it's going to be able to have much charge left after 19 years, because it looked like it was the original battery. This battery performing normally though. And the date and time are correct, so the CMOS battery must also be working. System fan LEDs. So this was one of the first laptops that had LEDs built into it. So it's got different zones of LEDs. It's got some across the front, some across the sides, and some on the lid. And it looks like you can change them here. So they're currently on blue. You're not going to be able to see that, but I'll show you them later. But you can change them. Same with the side panels and the speaker LEDs. And you can change the brightness. Pretty cool. So this doesn't have a separate Wi-Fi switch. It was called the Wi-Fi catcher, I think, on later XPS models, and that was, I think, in response to some airline concerns about using devices on the plane. But I don't think anyone's going to take a 17-inch gaming laptop on a plane, are they? I don't think they're going to have a very long entertainment value from that. I'm not sure it'd fit on an airline tray anyway. So we know it works. Let's try and get a hard disk in here and see if we can get it to actually install. First speed bump is that obviously there's no hard drive, as we've already discussed. I just looked down into the slot and it looks like it's not SATA. It looks like it's still parallel 88 at this point. And the problem with Dells of this era is that they use an interposer board between the hard drive and the chassis. And I'm not sure I've got a spare one of those. I think I have, but I'll need to dig it out. So let me go and do that. So I did find 2 interposers in my box of goodies, but I think these are the wrong type. I think these are Dell ones, these are IBM ones, I should say. And I think Dell ones are the opposite. So I dug out my Latitude D610, and indeed, yes, it's the other type we need. So I'm just going to steal this off here for now and put it on a hard drive. So rather unbelievably, I've used up all my supply of 2.5-inch IDE drives, apart from this one, which is a rather crappy 4200 RPM 30 gigabyte model. And in fact, this has come with some Apple firmware, it may not even work. But let's pop this in for now. I'm going to order a 7200 RPM drive. These take up to 137 gigabytes in size on their IDE. So I'll order something. When you bought them originally, they were spec'd with nothing very significant. They were either 80 or 100 gigabyte drives when they came. So this is going to be under spec. This is just going to allow us to install the operating system, and then when the faster drive arrives, I'll clone it over. So the interposer board goes on like this. It is keyed, so it can only go on one way, and then it slots in to the connector. So I also need to remove these little proprietary lugs on the side of the drive, which of course needs a special tool. So I'm guessing this will work just because it is IDE, and even with the Apple firmware it should still be fine. If indeed it's actually got Apple firmware, it may just have an Apple logo on it. Okay, let's put this into the caddy. So we know it goes this way up because there's screw holes in the bottom of the caddy and the screw holes in the bottom of the drive. And for a change, the caddy's actually got nice recessed little spaces here. So sometimes the caddies can be a bit problematic because you need really flush screws to get them in and out, but this has got nice recessed spaces. So the caddy goes in this way, and it should quite firmly connect at the back. Very nice. And then just need to secure it with some M3 screws, not Dell original, but they fit. Okay, so we have a hard drive in, and we have the original install media. So let's give it a go, see if we can get this up and running. So I'm just going to press F12, which will allow us to choose what we boot from. We're going to put the drive in, the optical drive. There's already a disk in there. There's already an XP professional disk in there, which is interesting. These are both the same. That one looks a bit grubby. Let's put the clean one in. In the meantime, the computer's booted and asked us which device we want to boot from. So I don't know what's on that hard drive. It's obviously not going to be a PC operating system. So we need to boot from the optical drive and then format it. Looks like the optical drive is working. So this particular version of this computer with the fastest processor and the fastest graphics card and with a 100 gig hard drive came in at about £2,100. That was in 2005/2006. So that's about £3,500 by UK prices in 2024. So that's a pretty expensive laptop, but you got a lot for your money. For example, how much does a high-end graphics card cost in 2024? About a third of the price of this, maybe a half of the price of this would have been. So I'm just looking at the advert for this machine, and Dell recommends Microsoft Office Small Business Edition 2003 for this. I don't think anybody's going to be using Office on this, they're going to be gaming. So we're going to delete that existing partition, and then we're going to use the unpartitioned space. And we'll do a quick format, otherwise the video will be 12 hours long. So the base model of this computer came in with a Pentium M at 2.13 gigahertz, which is still pretty fast. But it only had an 80 gig hard drive, and it only had the old GeForce Go 6800 Ultra graphics, so it had the previous generation graphics. But that would have set you back quite a lot less money, would have been about 3/4 of the price, so about £2,700 in UK prices 2024. Okay, this is all working, so we'll do a jump cut to the end. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Product key. There was a product key on the bottom, wasn't there? And we're in. Okay, so this obviously is the default Windows XP install. We're just using the standard official Microsoft disk, so there's no drivers, there's no extra utilities on there yet. But that's what this is for. So let's try this first disk and see what happens. Okay, interesting. Actually, there's two disks in here. One of which is very, very sticky. So in fact, probably going to clean these before we stick them in the machine. This is for installing Dell Inspire Neuro Tools system software. So maybe that's not from this disk set. In fact, yeah, it's 2002. That's a very old disk. So in fact, we don't need to worry about that one. It is, however, left some residue on this one. So we're going to clean that first. Okay, let's get the drivers in there and see if we can improve this native resolution. Again, I'm probably not going to make you watch the whole thing, but just be interested to see what happens when it auto loads. So Dell Resource Easy is about to begin the installation routine. Okay, let's see how automated it is or whether there's a lot of manual intervention involved. So it's detected the model and the operating system, and it suggested all these drivers that we can install. Just get rid of this. So audio drivers, chipset drivers, communication drivers for the modem, network drivers for the gigabit Ethernet and Pro Wireless. It's not going to install the glide point driver, maybe that's already on there. And it's not going to install this by default. And it doesn't say it's going to install the graphics card drivers either, so that's a little bit frustrating, but let's just see what it wants to do. Okay, so it's going to be one of those, do it all manually. It's going to be a little while. I'm definitely not going to be filming all of this. I will get back to you at the end unless something exciting happens in the meantime.
2 hours later.
Okay, so we've installed all the drivers off the original Dell disk, and also these couple of applications, and I've also downloaded the last driver that NVIDIA recommends for this hardware in Windows XP, which is 17948. So let's try and install that, see if we can get this desktop looking a little bit more high res. I think technically this might be a beta version, but it's the one that NVIDIA recommends on its website. I could have looked on the Dell website, I suppose, see if there's anything driver-wise on there as well. It's recognised the hardware, so that's good. While it's doing this, I've just realised I haven't installed Dell QuickSet off this first CD, and I've got a feeling that's the app that controls the LEDs on this. So I'm actually going to reinstall that as well. Let's have a look at this video driver first. Things are happening. Are we going to get a high resolution screen? It's gripping. It's gripping. Oh yes. Look how tiny that cursor is. So Windows XP was absolutely awful about scaling for high resolution displays. So everything has got absolutely minute, but that does mean at least the display driver has correctly installed. And we've got a working system. So yeah, let me just quickly install this last app, and then I think we're good to go. Look how crazy small this writing is. Okay, so installing that has actually given the option to increase the font size. So the icon size hasn't changed, text size hasn't changed in dialog boxes, but the desktop text has changed, and I'm guessing, yes, start menu has improved a little bit as well, so it's probably a bit more readable. Having a quick look on their website, there are some updates for pretty much every component we've got installed on here, so I'm just going to download and update everything. Okay, so all disks and drives have been loaded. Let's see what Dell gives you by default. So let's get all programs. So nothing added into accessories. Dell Resource is the disk we use for the updates. QuickSet is the tool for adjusting all sorts of things, but let me just show you. So you can change a few settings independent of like control panel. The most important two things in here are the battery meter, which tells us that the battery health is good. So that's good to know. And the other thing is the controlling of the LEDs. So there's 3 sets of LEDs, one on the speakers, one on the fans, and one on the back panel, and you can change it using these sliders or turn them off. The slide doesn't go smoothly, it goes in increments, and you actually get a specific color named after each one. I'll be showing you an examination. I'll show you an example of the lighting a little bit later, but this is how you change the lighting. You can also change the brightness, so it matches the brightness of the screen, but that's how you affect changes in the lighting. So we've got 3 different zones for the colors, and each zone is available in a distinct set of colors. So that's ruby, and you can have each of the different zones in different colors should you wish to. What else we got on here? Got standard Windows XP game install, drivers for the wireless, drivers for the graphics card. It bundles some Sonic optical drive tools, so you've got delay, which makes the drive act a bit like a big floppy. You've got record now copy and record now data, so I think you can copy optical discs and record optical discs. and it looks like a DVD player as well. Let's do the digital media home, see if that brings up anything interesting. So yeah, it looks like you can create audio CDs, create MP3 CDs, use this program to back up onto an optical drive, copy optical drives, create ISO images, create data disks, I'm not sure what that is. I can play DVDs, create video CDs and tools, so you can erase disks, finalize disks and find disk information. So not a bad little bundle of tools. That's pretty much it actually. Got some Bluetooth software. First versions of Windows XP weren't very good at dealing with Bluetooth, so you had a whole Bluetooth stack installed with utilities. So let's install some apps and some benchmarking software and see what we can come up with. Look at the absolutely awful hard disk performance figures from this 30GB Apple hard drive. I'm glad I've got another one on order. Okay, so I haven't recorded the retesting of 3D Mark 2000 because I knew it was going to give some fairly ludicrous results, and here we are, over 22,000 points. So that's for 3D Mark 2000. 2001 was also similarly stupid, 25,000 points. But those are very old benchmarks. This is a 2005/2006 machine with a 7800 GTX. So these numbers are pretty meaningless. What's going to be more interesting is going to be 2003, 2005 and 2006 test results. So let's run those now. It's taken quite a long time to load off this very poorly performing hard disk. We're just going to go straight for the benchmark with the default settings. So it's going to run at 1024 by 768, so that's a non-widescreen resolution on this widescreen display. So it's peaking at over 400 or 600 there, and dropping down to about 150 at a minimum. So yeah, so we're getting over 100 frames a second there. Dipping down to the high 80s. Just drop down there to low 60s. Fans just ramped up. So obviously we haven't cleaned the CPU or the GPU fans, and we haven't repasted them, so this is with 18-year-old thermal compound. Okay, there we have it. Nearly 15,000 3D marks for 2003. That's pretty decent results for a laptop. It's pretty decent results for a desktop, to be honest. Let's have a look at the details. So yeah, 364 frames per second on average on Wings of Fury. 115, 100, 85, nearly 86 frames per second on Mother Nature. That's very good. And the CPU is holding up pretty decent as well. 107 frames in the first and 16.5 in the second. Okay, let's quit that and run 2005. So it's going to be a little bit more taxing. So it's going to run it at 1024 by 768. So we had peak of 40 frames per second, it dropped to about mid-20s. And now we're going to get some action. I suspect the apps dropped to 17. But it's not bad. It's, you know, it's hovering around the low 20s in a busy scene. So looking here at the results, we're getting what? 28 frames per second, 20 frames, 34 frames per second. And then for the CPU test, we're getting 2 and 4 frames per second, give or take. Okay, 6,758 overall. Let's move on to 2006. Obviously, I haven't stated it, but we're on mains power, or on maximum performance in terms of power management. Okay, so this is going to run at a slightly higher resolution. We're going to go for 1280 by 1024, but still non-widescreen. So not quite slideshow, but it's certainly dipping below 10 frames per second on occasion. The visual quality is quite a step up from the previous iteration though. We're getting around 20 frames per second. This is not a bad screen. It's pretty decent viewing angles. It's pretty bright. It is reflective. I'm picking up a few reflections, which is a little bit annoying, but you're mostly going to be using this indoors, not outdoors anyway, so that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, there we have it. 3,537 3D marks. Let's have a look at the details. Return to Proxicon is 12, give or take. Firefly Forest is 13, give or take. Canyon's 14, Deep Freeze is 17. CPU score is 0.303 and 0.481 frames per second. So that's pretty low. But don't forget, this is a single core design. Fine. Okay, so I've got a feeling we could get better scores if we revise the driver down a little bit. But we haven't got time for that. We need to crack on and look at some other stuff. So let's have a quick look at this hard drive. So this is the 4200 30 gig hard drive. It's not going to be very performant, but at least it's healthy. So there you go. So that drive is working fine. I did show you a benchmark of the hard drive. I gave up because it was taking so long to run. I'm hoping to rerun the benchmarks when we put the proper hard drive in. Let's just do these two just for completeness sake, and then we can compare this 4200 versus the 7200 drive that's on order. This drive is very quiet though, you can hardly hear it at all, or maybe it's just the fan drowning this out. Being able to run a machine with Windows XP gives us a little bit more choice of software you can use to benchmark and investigate, which is nice. And there we go, maximum's 24 megabytes per second, give or take, dropping down to about 14 megabytes per second. So it's going to be averaging about 18, 19. And as you can see from the graph below, even the burst speed is pretty poor. Let's see if HG Tune agrees. I'm sure it will. Maximum of 24 megabytes per second, but that agrees. 18 is the minimum. Access time is 20 milliseconds, and burst rate is 70 megabytes per second. So it'd be interesting to see how different these are when we get that 7200 RPM drive in there. It's going to be a bigger drive, more modern capacity, probably denser recording density. For completeness, let's have a quick look at the others. We'll let them run with their default settings, but this is going to take forever. So there we have it for 3D Mark 304. Read 2251, write 2226, and then it drops to 14s and then less than 1. But actually, you know what? They're not absolutely terrible on the 4K and the 4K 32 depth. Well, that's not good. And here are the results for Crystal Disk Mark 5.5.0. So looking here at hardware info 32, Pentium M model 780 specifically. So it runs at 27 watts. So basically it's the same performance as a 3 gigahertz Pentium 4 for about a quarter of the power draw. You can see why they used it in notebooks and laptops. Here's confirming it's a GeForce Go 7800 GTX. So it's run on PCI version 1, but at 16 times, so that's good. It's got 256 megs of RAM, GDR3, and it's got a 256-bit memory bus. So memory's running dual channel, which is good, and it's running on the shorter timings that these support at 266 megahertz. So that's all good. Looks like it's running as fast as it can. I say the only thing that might help with this was kind of downgrading the driver slightly. It might help with certain benchmarks. Okay, well, I'm just installing some games on this laptop to try it out, and we've run out of disk space already. So this 30 gig hard drive is not big enough to load 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 decent sized games. So luckily, as it happens, the hard disk from China has arrived. So let's get that installed. So what we'll do is we'll clone the hard drive onto something USB, install this drive, and then clone it back and expand it to fill the whole space. So what I've ordered is a 60 gig hard drive, 7200 RPM, so it's going to be quite snappy, which I think suits this computer. This computer though originally only came with 80 or 100 gigabyte hard drives, 5400 RPM, so this is kind of a little bit of a step up from what would have been supplied in terms of speed, although a slight hit on capacity. That's assuming this is entirely what's under the label, because sometimes these things from China do get relabeled. This looks like it's come from an IBM, because it's got an FIU part number, so probably taken out of an IBM laptop. Hopefully it's working, we'll find out in a few minutes. So I've got this external USB enclosure. It also does eSATA actually, but it's quite interesting because it's got, on one end, it's got a SATA connector for a SATA hard drive, and on the other end it's got an IDE connector for on a laptop hard drive. So in fact, what I'm going to do is put the new drive in here, just clone it straight to it. So what I'm going to do is use the tools menu to clone the disk instead. So it's found the 60 gig hard drive and it's going to clone it. The existing internal drive, disk 1 to disk 2, and this is what it's going to look like after it's been cloned. So let's proceed. That appears to be working in that I can hear the drives working and I can see the access light flashing on and off. So by cloning it, we can cut out the middleman. We don't have to store the image on a USB and then reapply it. We can just do one to the other. Clone done. We just need to take it out of the caddy and put it into the machine. So moment of truth, is it going to be able to boot off the cloned hard drive? Does appear so. Excellent. Okay, new drive's in and we are booted into Windows, so that cloning process has worked. Just running Crystal Disk Info, and it confirmed it is a 60 gigabyte model that we thought with an 8 megabyte buffer. What's really interesting is only been switched on 4 times and run for a total of 5 hours. So either somebody's been in to the firmware of this device and somehow played with that, or this is essentially a new drive. It is showing good health and temperature seems reasonable, so that's potentially a win. What's quite worrying is that because of the crazy prices now that are happening in the UK and other parts of the world for retro gear, it was cheaper to buy this in China and have it shipped all the way to the UK rather than buy one here. And I think that's maybe a reflection on the fact that things maybe gone a little bit too crazy in the market, not to mention the fact that from a carbon emissions point of view, that was pretty pointless. I could have got one locally, but it just wasn't cost effective. Anyway, back to this drive. It seems to be working. Let's see if it's any faster than the one we've taken out. Okay, the results are in. Actually, they're not as big a jump as I was expecting. It is faster, but not massively so. In fact, slightly better performance from HD TAC version 3.0.4.0. And same here with HD Tune. Things have improved a little bit. Access time's better. Burst rate's a little bit low, I would say. So we're playing Combat Flight Simulator with the resolution set to maximum, which is 1920 by 1080. It doesn't do 1200, and all the settings set to maximum, and we're getting 60 frames per second, which I presume is a cap on the engine. We get a little bit less than that when we go near the ground. If I just go down, when I fly near the ground and the details come in, it drops to the kind of mid-50s. 50 there. But yeah, so this game is not a problem on this machine, maxed out, maximum resolution, maximum details. Been hit by flak. There we go, so Combat Flight Simulator 3, absolutely no problem on this machine. Okay, so Flight Simulator 2004. So this machine was released in 2005, very end of 2005. So Flight Simulator 2004 was the appropriate flight simulator for the age, and we're flying over Hong Kong here. The resolution is again 1920 by 10, 1920 by 1080, 16-bit. The target frame rate is 60 frames per second. I've got all the details set up to high, not ultra high, but high, and things seem to be looking pretty good. We're getting frame rates anything between 35 and 60, depending on what we're pointing at. No doubt as we get closer to the scenery, things will get a little bit more tricky. So yeah, we're still getting pretty decent frame rates, even though we're getting near all the buildings. Some of these textures are a little bit weird at this resolution, but extremely playable. So I've just turned everything up to ultra high, and frame rate's still pretty good, 30 frames per second. Visual appearance has improved a little bit. So yeah, it's very, very, very playable, even on ultra high settings at 1920 by 1080. It is only 16-bit though. So just improved things to 32-bit at 1920 by 1080. Frame rate's still very, very decent, and the visual quality has improved very slightly. So 32-bit is definitely worthwhile for Flight Simulator on this machine. So can it play Far Cry? Well, we are playing in 1920 by 1020 at 32 bits. We currently have textures set to medium, everything's set to medium, and in-game it's ranging between 60 and 100 frames per second. So let's see if we can improve that a little bit. So yeah, Far Cry, with these settings, you can play at around 60 frames per second in the native resolution of the screen almost. So Call of Duty is proving to be a little bit tricky. I can't get a good combination of resolution and settings to get a playable frame rate. The only way to do it will be to drop it down to something like 480p. So yeah, even at this resolution it's a little bit unplayable at times. I think we're mostly CPU limited here actually, rather than GPU. So the next version of this computer has a Core 2 Duo, so that would probably help quite a lot. So Call of Duty, unfortunately not playable, not at a reasonable resolution anyway. This is what we're set at the moment, 1280 by 720, and with everything set to kind of low or normal, it's pretty tricky. We had to have 720 by 480 to get any kind of decent frame rate, but the graphics were just very poor. So Call of Duty is a no-no, but Call of Duty was released 2 years after this computer, so perhaps not surprising. So Grand Theft Auto is at maximum that it will let me select, which is 1680 by something, I can't remember what it is, in 16-bit colour. It won't let me select 1920 by 1028. So yeah, 1680 by 1050 by 16 is the highest resolution I can select. I can select another resolution, and then it always just pops back down to that. So that's all I can set it to. And at that resolution it is playing at 30 frames per second, which I think is the cap on this particular engine maybe. So Grand Theft Auto, very playable, maximum resolution that the game supports. All good. Again, it was released in 2002 though, so there's a good chance it should be playable on this computer. So one thing that's intrigued me with this computer since I got it is that it's got this feeling that the battery still works. So let's find out. Power cord is out. And it is still working. The screen has gone dimmer and the network card has been disabled by the looks of it. But it is holding a charge of some kind. So it reckons it's got 97% chance, 97% charge left on the battery at the moment. Let's just let it run for a bit and see what happens. Let's see what happens when we run a default benchmark on battery power, see what kind of numbers we get. It's probably going to throttle the CPU and the GPU on battery. Okay, jury's back in and we've got 22,000, so that's a little bit less on 3D Mark 2000, but that's actually not very different considering it's been on battery power. The screen was quite a lot dimmer and the contrast on some of those images was pretty poor. But otherwise, actually, that's a very decent performance on battery. Most importantly, the battery is working. Let's just see what's left of the battery. So a single run of 3D Mark 2000 took 15% battery. Total time remaining 1 hour, it reckons. So not only do we have a working computer, we have a working battery as well, which is excellent for a machine of this age. So what do we think of the Dell XPS M170? I like it a lot. This particular one's got some scratches and needs a bit of a clean, but otherwise it's fully functional. Even got a battery that's going to last an hour, hour and a half maybe, with a little bit of light gaming, which is amazing considering the age. Sound wise it's really good. It's got a decent set of speakers. Even on third volume it's plenty loud enough. I haven't tried any of the headphone ports or anything, but I'm sure the sound's going to be pretty good. RGB lighting is nice, and I don't know if this was the first Dell that had RGB lighting. It certainly lifts the machine a little bit, gives it a bit of presence. It's got a lot of presence already because it's got a 17-inch screen and weighs an absolute ton. But it is a great machine. Is it collectible? Definitely. These are going for some slightly crazy prices these days, and quite often they're missing bits and pieces like the batteries and hard disk covers, so choose carefully. The models that came after this were quite a lot more powerful, not in terms of graphics, but in terms of CPU. When the Core 2 Duo versions came out of this, they were quite a lot faster. But I think this is probably a bit CPU limited in some games, even though it was the fastest Pentium M available at the time, 2.23 gigahertz. That's pretty fast for a Pentium M. Don't forget this was competing with a Pentium 4, and performance-wise, though, this is much better than a Pentium 4. So this is, you know, at least a 3 gigahertz Pentium 4 performance. I'm having trouble holding it up, it's making my arm ache, it's so heavy. Is it a proper gaming laptop? Definitely. You saw the scores, we were getting some of those games 60 frames per second with the maximum settings. That's really good. I didn't get a chance to try a whole load of games, but the ones I did try I thought were fairly sort of contemporaneous, and you know, it performed pretty well. Call of Duty 4, which came out a few years after this machine, was struggling, but that was the only thing so far that I found that hasn't played on here. It's nice to have the original restored discs and the manual as well. This is definitely going to be a permanent part of my collection. I've got quite a few Dells, but I haven't got anything this big or this crazy, so I'm very glad to have this. What am I going to do with it next? Well, now we've upgraded the hard drive to a bit more space, I can put some more games on there. There are some upgrades we can do. We can't upgrade the graphics card or the CPU, but we can upgrade potentially the RAM, although I think 2 gig might be the limit, and definitely we can upgrade the hard disk further to an SSD, and that might give some extra performance. I can't decide how to get the scratches out of the cover. If anybody's got a good idea about that, leave a comment down below. But otherwise, it's in pretty good condition. I was thinking about building a Windows XP gaming computer using a Pentium 4, but I'm just thinking to myself, do I need to now? This has been so good at those era games that you know, maybe building a desktop might be a bit redundant. That's how good it is. Anyway, hope you liked the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did. YouTube's going to show you some videos about related content. See if you enjoy those as well. Thanks for watching. See you next time.